evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the CCN News Media On Point. And tonight we're on point with a variety of topics. My name is Wanda Carter. I'm your host, and I'd like to take just a moment to have Miss Levette and Miss Madeline introduce themselves, and then we'll begin this segment of the CC News Media On Point. Levette, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Lavette Haynes. I am representing Lemo, and that's Lavette's in my opinion. So therefore, there are no arguments because it's just my opinion. I am a cultural arts journalist with CC News Media, and I'm also executive director of a arts organization, Westside Cultural Arts Council, and and knee deep in Garfield Park Advisory Council, and hopefully we'll get a chance to announce our Lagoon Fest before the evening is out.
Absolutely, we got to do that. We got to do that. The Lagoon Fest folks are coming up. She gonna tell you all about.
Sure. On September the 16th, that's this Saturday, from 10 in the morning until 3 p.m., we will be celebrating the activities around the lagoon at Garfield Park, 100 North Central Park Avenue. And this is our first annual event. And we will have a wonderful time sharing. The grant that was funded was Together We Heal by Department of Cultural Affairs. DCASE, that's what they call themselves now, DCASE. And so we are going to just bring some attention to our natural resources and deal with the waterways from Lake Michigan to the hydrants at Kaumba Trey Garden to the lagoon of Garfield Park, making sure that our water is safe and that our fishermen who are fishing in the lagoon are capturing clean fish. So that's pretty much it. And we can expound a little bit later, put up a flyer. So we'll do that before the show is out.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hey, Lawanza, how are you?
Yeah. Okay. Now, what was Levette mentioning about you're gonna be doing something with the water where they're
Yeah,
gonna be fishing?
we're gonna have a Lagoon Fest this coming
Uh-huh.
Saturday.
Oh,
She was just giving our audience an overview of the activities that will take place at the Lagoon Fest.
oh, she was talking
And,
about the clarity of the water. Yeah, that
yeah,
was
and one of the things that we're going to be highlighting is the water safety of the water and what we're doing about that to make sure that, as she said, the fish in the water are fish we can catch and consume.
well, maybe I can kind of help you out a little bit about that.
Well, introduce yourself and tell us what you think about that. Now, remember, this is the start of the show. I'm just having folks go around
Uh-huh.
and introduce themselves and make whatever announcements they have to make, and then we're going to start this segment.
Okay. Well, I'll just say I used to work as an environmental chemist, testing water quality per EPA
Oh,
standards. Yeah, I did it over at IIT starting as a technician. I worked for the Chicago Park District in the
oh,
late 90s, and I'm the one who used to test the water in all the lakefront beaches and the lagoons in the city of Chicago, Lincoln Park, and you know, uh, museum. And the one
wow,
for the
that's
water, yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, I used to do that. So I'm very interested in doing more about um, your plans to check for the water quality. That's of interest to me.
Levette, you hear this, brother?
Yes, and we need to make sure that the water is safe. Um, we are doing a survey that day, so that people can sign and make demands from the park district that we do have safe water. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about that a little later, but we do have a campaign going so that we have clean water, and we know that the pumps are working in the lagoons. Um, and, I think it was last winter before last, people thought that the lagoons were poisoned because the three lagoons over on the west side, Douglas, Humboldt, and Garfield, all had dead fish. And so we did reach out to um, the Chicago Park District, and they explained to us that because the water had uh, become so warm, and then it was a freeze over, a lot of the fish that were coming to the surface suffocated. So it wasn't as though someone threw poison in the water, because some of the residents, they were freaking out. But we did inquire, and we were informed that it had something to do with the freeze over, and the fish were not able to come up and get air. So a lot of the fish died in the lagoons on the west side.
Interesting, boy. Every time we do this show, I learn something new. We're going to talk later, Luans, about maybe you will come and attend the fest and get to talk with some of our visitors about the water safety and so forth, because Libet is going to be doing that. She has a speaker that's going to be doing that, and maybe you can come and just
Well, what
lend a
I'll
hand.
say about that, if are you finished?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well say, the sanitation lab, a guy named Steve Parker, he worked in the sanitation lab, that's what they called it, for the Chicago Park District, and he used to test it, year round. Um, and anyway, well, he did that for, I think he was soon retiring. And so here comes the new millennium. Well, the Chicago Park District, to my understanding, no longer, at least going to new millennium, was not doing the testing of the waters. Uh, they outsourced it to like Stat Analysis Clinic is over in the medical district. I know they offered me a job one time.
Okay.
Um, to work in a laboratory, and I had already worked and so they had a contract to do that for the city. Um, the lab used to be under the rafters of the old Soldier Field before the remodeling on the west side of the field. A lot of people didn't know. When you pass by Soldiers Field, going down South Lakeshore Drive, you see that facade on the outside, but actually underneath those rafters, in the rafters under those seats, was a chain of offices uh, that used to be, because Soldiers Field, so they had some sort of business going on back in the day,
Okay. We're gonna
and
have to
whatever.
move on. We have to cut it short and move on. But
Hmm.
perhaps we can get you
Hmm.
put your number in the name in the chat so that Levesque can follow up with you
Yeah, sure.
uh,
And,
for the
and I
Saturday
just
program.
Yeah, and
And
I just like to say that I was over at the park the other day. Someone called me and said that the police
oh,
were at the lagoon, and what we found out is that it was the Illinois State Conservation Department. So
oh,
that might be who is checking the lagoon out. So I got to follow up with them, because they were in the lagoon, and we didn't find out. I didn't get over there in time because someone called me, and I didn't get over there in time to question them. But I started thinking, oh, well, maybe they have something to do with knowing
that we
what.
coming up on Saturday.
Right, but and so I did call them. I didn't get a response, but I'll reach back out to them tomorrow. And then what we would like to happen is for people to take a survey or sign up and let us know that you have an interest in what's going on in the lagoon. And when we have our forum, then we can invite everybody out.
Okay, Luanza?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank both of you for
I'll,
the
I'll,
information.
I'll put in my information, if you need
Okay.
that.
I appreciate that. Okay,
Uh,
Madeline. Madeline, give us
uh,
an introduction on who you are and what you do, and then we're going to start this segment of the program.
Yeah, I work in the criminal law area. I have a few spaces that I work in on behalf of individuals who are incarcerated. The majority of our work currently for the last 3 years has been in the state prisons, working to get people either get their sentences commuted or get them a pardon. And now the work, in fact, has extended to another category because now, in fact, this just happened this week. One of the cases that we had that we were prepared to start working on the clemency report for, actually, we just got some new evidence on his case. It's a rape case, and his daughter, which caused him to get incarcerated, actually was located by a couple of family members, and she wants to come forward now and recant the statement that she made that got her father incarcerated. So that puts us in a position now that we had not been functioning in. Of course, again, since I don't have my law license yet, I did talk to a couple of lawyers to get some advice about the best method to go forward with to make sure that we get him exonerated. Because even when you present new evidence, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to go smoothly so that you end up walking out of prison. Anything can go wrong. So this is a big deal for us. And for me personally, it's a big deal because it is my first case where I'm actually in a position to finally see someone exonerated and thus coming out of prison after being there since 2012 at this point.
Okay, well, thank you for that info. And I wish you the best of luck with that case, because I'm sure that person would appreciate every effort that you're making to help them get out of prison. And if you got new evidence, then I'm sure that is probably the best way to go, with to get that out there so he can get his case appealed.
Oh yeah. Well, his case, no, that's not the way it works. He had already filed an appeal, which was denied. The appeal was denied. And the denial really was simply an affirmation of the finding that the circuit court had determined when they convicted him. So, in fact, at this point, he's actually on the way to the Supreme Court to try to get a petition for leave to appeal the finding of the appellate court. But now with this new evidence, we really can bypass some of that. And my information is that now we, in fact, can go directly to the state's attorney's office. The case was heard in Cook County, so that's where we'll be going. And the state's attorney has a lot of power to bypass the court system in part, and actually move the needle in a way to actually look at the evidence that was presented at the circuit court level that resulted in his getting convicted and sentenced. And they're able to move the process along in a way to actually get him exonerated. So we'll be going directly to the state's attorney's office.
That's wonderful. Well, go, girl. Oh, I'm so proud that I'm sure his family is proud. So wish you the best of luck. Thank you for that information. Sure. Brian, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I've been better, but I'm trying to overcome these health issues that I've been dealing with lately. But how are you guys?
Tell us a little bit about you and your work, and then we're gonna go on and talk about Trump and his capacity to run for president in the U.S.?
Well, yeah, I'm very much so looking forward to that topic. I am a photographer, writer, and advocate for inmates, particularly wrongful incarceration. Those who have been wrongfully incarcerated, I should say.
And so I would imagine that since you and Madeline both, and Sarah as well, you all are focused on wrongful convictions, that must be a very large or big, grandiose kind of situation. Like there are a lot of people seemingly that are being wrongfully convicted. And
well, yes, and what happens is, for one, the system is very much so biased and unfair and repressive to people of color, and also not just here in Illinois, but even throughout America.
All right. And hey, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing from you all. So I think that this, what you're working on, probably should be viewed as a movement, and you guys need to collectively do whatever you can to support one another, because I'm sure the people that are imprisoned so hope that you're able to help them. And I wish them good luck as well. So let's move on. I got some information from, I want to say, Dr. Spivey, about Trump being able to run for president, even though he has been indicted and may end up going to prison. Is it possible, in your opinion, that he could, in fact, run for president as a convict, as a imprisoned person? Could he do that? I mean, does anybody know?
Well, according to the Constitution, and what is it, the 14th Amendment, I believe it is, that basically, due to the fact that he caused an insurrection, he's ineligible for the presidency.
So is that because, I mean, is that as a result of if he gets convicted, or is that just because he's been indicted?
No, because he called for an insurrection.
Oh, because he called for the insurrection, but it doesn't have to be proved. I mean, we know he did, but until the courts say that he did officially.
The question needs to be asked in the Constitution. Do they state that there has to be a determination by the justice system? Does the justice system, period, get involved with making a call that there was an insurrection? We don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, for one, and to my point too, is according to the 14th Amendment, he's not eligible. We all know he called for the insurrection, whether it has been quote unquote proven in a court of law or not. He called for the insurrection. He was impeached over it for the second time, I might add, but again, it's one of those things that the congressional body needs to enact upon to bar him from being able to run for the presidency. I don't see the congressional body acting upon it for whatever reason. They need to act upon it and enforce it, and disallow him from running for the presidency a second time or third time.
But as we all know, the Congress, the Senate specifically, has been very, very slow at even bringing this matter to court.
But listen to this. Okay, it says, I was just checking it out, right? It said that the legal actions, now I'm reading from CBS News.
Okay.
It says the legal actions invoke what is known as the disqualification clause, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And the provision has now been cited in 2 lawsuits brought by voters in Colorado and Minnesota who argue Trump is constitutionally ineligible to hold federal office because of his actions surrounding the January 6, 2021 assault on the U.S. Capitol. So there is traction taking place to make this a reality. Now, how the government and how the Supreme Court and how the judges, I think all of that has to pan out, because sometimes as you're looking at situations being brought against him, and then he's figuring out which judge or which circuit court he can request something of, and it might be a Trump judge, or it that gives him this leeway. And so that's what he does best. He has been known to be one that delayed through court action.
Yeah.
So, just like the wrongly incarcerated, they don't have the funds to fight.
Yes. Right.
And so he has been charged with manipulating his funds, quiet as is kept. We probably have more money than he does. But because he knows how to finagle the money and raise money through his PACs and spend it any kind of way. If there had been others who did exactly what he's doing and what he's done,
election fraud,
they would have been in jail a long time ago. So this is a society that favors the rich and ignores the poor.
Ooh, now that's a cold statement, and that's a very true statement. In that's what the history has been. That's what the history has been. Go ahead. Were you about to say something else, Levette?
No.
Oh, okay. So I was looking at what this Joy Reid has to say about Trump. Let's just take a minute, look at this, and then I wonder. We looked at the other one. So
don't scroll away. It's Senator Warnock. Listen, in 2022, over 400.
So admittedly, I am not a lawyer, but something tells me that this is not what a defendant wants his lawyer to be saying on the TV.
President Trump wanted to get to the truth. He desperately wanted to get to what happened during the 2020 cycle. He did it in the courtroom. He did it in lobbying legislatures. That's all First Amendment. And then at the end, he asked Mr. Pence to pause the voting for 10 days, allow the state legislatures to weigh in, and then they could make a determination to audit or re-audit or recertify. But what he didn't do is, send in the tanks, tell Mr. Pence, don't go to the Capitol Hill.
What happened, Wanda?
That would obstruct the due process of government.
I'm sorry.
What are you doing?
I was just showing you guys what happened with Trump.
There is just silence.
Oh, y'all don't hear nothing?
I hear it.
I hear it.
Oh, really?
I heard it also.
Oh, I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, well, that's okay.
You probably need to have a driver, is not a sound driver, probably needed in Zoom. She probably, or whatever she's using, phone, probably don't have it to pick up that.
I heard it because she played it earlier before the show started.
Oh, you heard it then, right?
So maybe it's something that I have open. Let me just go ahead. Just proceed.
Okay. Hold on. I'm a let it play for 3 minutes and then I'll stop and come back and we'll talk about what's
And
being.
I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
This is concerning again, this is from Black's Law Dictionary, which is kind of like the one of the legal Bibles, if you will, for
Okay.
all legal terms and so forth. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, super. Okay, so what it says here is that, and I'm going to cut to the chase with this. No person shall be in the elected president and vice president or hold any office under the United States or any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. That's an important point right there. See,
Yeah.
he has not been convicted. He's only been indicted. He has not been convicted. He hasn't even gone through all the pretrial phase of his case.
So legally.
And so legally, he's eligible to run for the presidency.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That he can still run for the presidency because they have not, it's taken them 2 years to take that man to court. What does
I
he
can tell
have
you
on people? He must have something really serious on these folks that they are scared to take this man to court.
But you got to consider the fact that the legal process itself is, it takes a lot of time.
It's convoluted.
The red tape, they go through all of this stuff with Congress having the hearings and all of that, and they want to broadcast it. That takes a lot of time too,
Yes,
just
it
to set all
does.
that. Do they need to have to do all of that? They're gonna make a decision whether you look at it or not,
That's right.
And
and what you're saying is absolutely true. And do you all know, of course, I know you've heard this via the news, that now Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, one of Joe Biden's sons, who is known to have drug addict problems, he's about to be investigated, and Joe Biden is also going to be investigated because it is alleged that the two of them have been involved in dealings that were questionable and that may be, and I'm going to underline may be, impeachable. So that's a new development.
Oh, man.
And that just happened yesterday. Today is Wednesday.
Can you imagine how we look to the rest of the world?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I can also tell you guys this. Joe Biden is in serious trouble. The Democratic Party is in serious trouble. And what do I mean? Joe Biden will lose this election. Why? Because of all these illegal immigrants who are being allowed to come into this country. There are a lot of angry people, myself included, who are not happy about this mess. Because what it says is that you're not taking care of all the citizens of the United States who are homeless, who are struggling, who have had financial problems, et cetera, et cetera. You're letting all these illegals come in here, and that is not wholesome for the United States. And one other thing I'm going to say in connection with that, several weeks ago, there's a woman, P. Ray. She goes under the name of P. Ray. She has a program on WVON Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. She had, a few weeks ago, she had Donald Trump's former national security advisor to come on her program to talk, and he talked about why all of the illegal immigrants are being allowed to come to the United States. And he said, this is all about the connection to the drug cartel.
That the people coming to United States is related to the drug cartel?
That's exactly what he said. And he said that all of those illegal immigrants who are coming to this country, and for example, those people who are coming to Chicago, think about this, guys. Chicago is a major hub in the United States for transportation because it's in the center of the United States. A lot of these immigrants who are coming here, he didn't even say a lot. He said all of them who are coming here, they're going to be set up in housing. They're going to be set up in whether it's apartments or houses. But Chicago is a perfect location for immigrants to be coming. This illegal, and they're not migrants, by the way. They are illegal immigrants. That is precisely what they are. And he said that they are going to be, as they're coming here, they're going to be connected to the drug cartel to set up expanded distribution points. And keep in mind, as this man is talking, he was Trump's national security advisor. So, of course, he would know all of this stuff. And he can put it out there because he has nothing to lose. He's no longer in that position now. And that is exactly what this guy said. And I did hear, in fact, last night or early this morning, that there were illegal immigrants selling drugs, okay, in some area of Chicago. Somebody said they saw that happening.
Well, that's not surprising. People who don't have no money, they don't got no jobs, they're not eligible. But yeah, you're gonna definitely see that.
Yeah, well, but in the meantime, as we know, the city council divvied up what was it, $51 million initially, and more money has been spent, and more money is going to be spent. They're going to be placed in housing. They're getting clothing. I mean, a lot of resources. School, their children will be able to go to school. So all of the resources, my information is that all of the resources that they will need, they will get.
What happens to the man and woman that sleeps under the bridge today in the cardboard box? What resources are they getting? Can they get the same resources?
You know what? That's an excellent question. And it's something that we need to be putting before the city council of Chicago. And I'll tell you all one other thing that needs to happen with the city council, because the Latinx people, they put out an announcement, and this came through on the again on this particular radio program. They have an announcement out about jobs available in several categories, with one caveat: you must be bilingual, and to that end, you must speak Spanish. Now that is total nonsense. Yeah. English is the language of origin of the United States. And my statement is, we need to go to the city council, and I'm prepared to do that, to tell them, no, this will not happen. You must create an ordinance saying that English is the language of origin of the United States, and you cannot allow anybody to come here and try to impose Spanish on the U.S. population, and thus to deny them the opportunity to apply for any job because they're not bilingual.
Right. That's exactly. That's another sign. That's another sign of classism.
Well, guess what? You now, even jobs, because this was an issue with a Black organization on the West Side announcing a job opening. And the criteria was that you be bilingual. So we're like, wait a minute, this is a Black organization, this job is in the Black community, and this is automatically eliminating most of the Black people unless you know how to speak Spanish.
Right.
And so you've got your hospital jobs, your restaurants, your legal companies, and they're all saying on the application, you have to be bilingual. And so that is eliminating so many people, Black people, from applying for these jobs. And I would just recommend that our children learn Spanish. That's just it.
Livette, that's all well and fine, but the fact of the matter is, again, English is the language of origin of this country. Think about this. There's not a country on this planet that I could go to and say, well, and have start having an influx of English speaking people and say, well, English is going to be the primary language of, let's say, France. And so you can't get a job in France unless you're speaking English. I mean, how ridiculous does that sound? And I can tell you that the government there would not permit that.
I do think it's ridiculous. But what I'm saying is that the reality is that, and this is not something that just happened yesterday. This is why you will go into the hospitals and you don't see Black women. Black women used to have those jobs. Intake. And now you just don't see that. And so I think that Chicago should declare, what is the word, de-declare or renege or take back the fact that it is a sanctuary city. And the reason being is because sanctuary cities don't allow you to vet the immigrants or migrants that come to the city. You don't know if they're gang members, drug dealers. It is, and this is what Lightfoot did. She put it into law. And so we need to revisit this law that says you cannot vet these people. That's the issue. And so you've got people coming in that are criminals that have that's not under our jurisdiction to even do anything with them. Now, there was some woman a few days ago that attacked the police or did something, and they said that she's in jail now. But trust me, her the what do you call it, the counselor, they will they have to take them to I forgot the terminology.
You're talking about the embassies for these people.
Right. You have to take them there. And so it really puts Black Chicagoans and New York people in such a disadvantage. I think they were saying that New York now has 100,000 immigrants. And so there needs to be something done where this doesn't just disrupt the country, because the resources are the main thing. And I was trying to help someone look into housing. And so I was like, okay, well, let me make the call and see if I could just get some quick answers. I was on that phone over 40 minutes until I just hung up, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is what's going on. If you are a citizen, you can't get through. And then I took someone to a food pantry, and the woman that was directing the information to all the people in line, she was speaking in Spanish, and every other word she says, she was holding up this document, she says, and da 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 Medicare, and da 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 Medicare, and da 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 Medicare, really guiding them like, this is Medicare, this is how it works, This is what you qualify for. So the resources that my people, I see my people can't get, it doesn't apply to other people. You don't have to have a license. You don't have to have social security card. You don't have to have birth certificate. You don't have to have all of these requirements if you're an immigrant. But if you are just a regular citizen, you are under scrutiny. You've got to prove everything. And so it is a very insensitive moment that we're living, where I'm seeing so many of our people, you know, they're on canes, they're bent over, you know, they're subjected to whatever these drugs are on the street. They're just falling apart. And so society doesn't care. It's like you can be discarded so fast. It's like, just get out of the way. And you know, and there's a plan in place, and it doesn't seem like it includes us unless we can unify around some issues and make a difference. I don't know if anybody knows George Blakemore. Does anybody on here know George Blakemore?
No, I don't.
Okay, George Blakemore is downtown. He's an older gentleman, and he cusses everybody out. He's on Facebook if you want to look him up. And he is cursing these people out every day downtown, demanding that the water reclamation department does this, demanding that all of these departments are in compliance and serving the residents of Chicago. And he's the only one down there. And it's like, you know, as much as I was like, you know, I don't like him all the time, but when he's talking up, because the other day he was showing the construction site, and he was like, not one black person. And I've gone through the whole city, and I've seen so many crews, and there's not, black people are not working on the construction sites. And so these people are employed. These people, they just had a crew shipped to Wisconsin. That the immigrants, they were shipped to Wisconsin so that they could be employed. So while we are either not encouraging our young people, or our young people are so disengaged and so wounded that that motivation is not there. And it's like, you know, it's a tipping that's about to happen, and we need to have some control, because when the commander, the superintendent of police, comes out for his first engagement, that was last week, his first engagement was to Pilsen. He went over to Pilsen to assure them that the police department was with them. And I was like, okay, so when is he coming to our neighborhood? And the next message was, he's not. The only thing that he's about to do is address the elected police, community police people. That's who he's going to speak with. And I guess after he speaks with them, then they can come and tell us. But there was no scheduled meeting for him to address the Black community.
Then we need to make a comment about that. We need to, if that is something, if he did that for Hispanics, then we can talk about that.
Right, because
do your article, and let's bring that to somebody's attention.
He ain't saying nothing that Johnson ain't letting them do.
I know, but what it's just the perception, right? And that here we are ignored again. And so, it's like, how much can you bear when
let's contact the mayor. Let's contact his office.
That's something I want to say, through all of this, with this illegal immigrants and all of that, the largest, these people, you just can't just look at that they're illegal immigrants. There's more, there's more to the pie than that. They got a religion. Most of them are Catholic, right? They're Christian Catholic. And see, this is important because the largest archdiocese is here in Chicago. It's larger than the archdiocese over there in New York. Also, the largest Catholic parish in the city and in the nation is St. Agatha. I went to, they had me going to K5, then took me out. And so this is a silent partner and contributor to this crisis, particularly in this city, that we lived in. What gets these people together are the individual parishes. When a parish goes out in one of their communities, it makes TV. You don't see that about no black churches. We got so many of them. And so the silent partner, that bishop over there, that's our bishop. What is their role in supporting, illegal immigrants? Their influence on government. See, this is silent power that you don't hear anything about. I know they're certainly not in the black neighborhood doing anything because they know parishes too much in the black neighborhood. Not today, and when there was, we didn't have much influence going on with Cardinal Cody. Remember him back in the 60s and 70s. So this is this. If you want to talk about that, you got to talk about that archdiocese because see these people they contribute heavily to the coffers of the Catholic Church in the archdiocese in Chicago. The archdiocese plays a pivotal uh, position and role in supporting them being here and them getting a lot of the leeway and benefits that we're hearing about both locally and in the state as well as nationally. Not to mention what's coming in over here from Rome. You see, this is important. Yes.
Yeah, because one thing is that as they're being placed in our community, they will become residents who are qualified to vote.
That's right.
So there is no mistake.
No mistake. No.
And so if we're not encouraging our young people and having them see that they're becoming second class citizens, they have to get behind these people because as long as there's been homelessness, as long as there's been homelessness, as long as there's been a disparity in resources, I've never seen them deliver water to the people on the street that look like me. I've never seen them deliver clothes, bring trucks to shower, and so when you look at all of the police departments,
all of the disparities you just named. Go on, sister.
And when you see the immigrants laying at the foot of the police departments, you see resources being brought into them, food, clothing, and I'm not saying that is a condition that is warranted because it's not. That's not humane. But the thing is that someone is looking at the humanity of it and doing something about it. Whereas our people who are on the street, who are homeless, what they're doing, they're taking their shelters and tearing them down. And just like when COVID happened, and they were able to build a shelter at McCormick Place, even though it didn't really fill up. But now on 115th, I think, in Pullman, they just produced a campsite where there's like 300 beds ready to take them off the street and to put them in a shelter. But just that, and it just sort of hurts, that you see that the same consideration is not being given for your own kind.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing that's going to happen. All of these illegal immigrants who are being allowed to come into the United States, there's two factors for us to keep in mind. Number one, Haitians are not being allowed to come in here, come to the U.S. like
Keep
that.
on tag, no Africans. Keep talking.
Yeah, the Sudan has a major crisis happening as we speak. They're not being allowed to come to the U.S. Okay, and there's another reason why these illegal immigrants are being allowed to come here. They're coming here to actually replace us African Americans. That's the other thing that's going on. The need for Black folks in this country technically ended with slavery. And so all of the social engineering and the other practices, disparate practices, all the criminalization of Black Americans, all of the stuff that has been going on has all consistently been about marginalizing our people, emasculating our Black men, and really looking for ways to end our presence in the United States. And so this influx of all these illegal immigrants, that's a big part of it. And also remember, guys, that Pritzker got a bill passed so that these illegal immigrants can apply for and become police officers in the state of Illinois. How insane is that? And they don't have to be citizens of the United States. Who ever heard of such nonsense? But he did that.
And I want to ask a question now. And Levette, made reference to this earlier about illegal immigrants, getting citizenship, the right to vote. I say that in the backdrop of the work that King was doing with the freedom fighters down in Mississippi. Now, one of the main arguments that they were making was that, look, you got all of these Black men and Black people being lynched down there in Mississippi, especially because, well, if you can't be a registered voter, well, you got to be a registered voter, otherwise you can't sit on a jury. So we're looking at the prospect. And incidentally, when's the last time anyone in this forum been invited to sit down in a jury? I'm 63, I've never been to one. I don't know anybody else.
I've never been called to sit on a jury. Never.
Okay, and I've been a registered voter since 1979, and so you have the prospect of these people who have no history in this country. They're not very politically sophisticated. Anyone, and even Latino politicians will tell you that the Black politicians, next to the whites, are the most politically savvy and sophisticated in this country, because look what we've gone through. And so you get the prospect of these people sitting on juries, standing in judgment, of us. It only takes one Black person. It takes one person to create a hung jury, and say, hey, I don't agree with it, right?
That's
so
right.
This is a dangerous thing going on here.
Oh, I heard it.
Very dangerous.
Uh-oh.
So, what action should we contemplate in terms of, now that we've discussed that Trump can, in fact, until he's convicted, run for president? We know that he has amassed people from around the world to stand behind him. You know, it's no longer going to be a shock to us that, what was it, 70 million people said that if he ran again, they would vote for him.
Do you really believe all that stuff that they saying in the news polls? I think they're lying. But
they may be, but should we sit back and say they're lying and do nothing to amass some support for the fact that we know now we're the Hispanics are the new niggas in town?
Well,
we lost our position.
Well, you know what? This too. You know, okay. W.E.B. Du Bois once said, "A system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect."
Come on now.
Now, this is something that Black people, whether they be Democrat, Republican, or even independent, for whatever reason, don't seem to get. Like, for example, our communities and our economic culture and structure, that's something we have to do. That's not something that the government can do. Now, I mean, of course, now it was also said by Abraham Lincoln that it is the responsibility of government to do for those who basically who cannot do for themselves. Okay, I believe that, but it wasn't meant for people to make a way of life of it.
Yes.
And another thing too, why integrate in a world that has made it clear they don't want you? And it's obvious with the direction that I guess America is trying to go with the immigrants coming in from Mexico or wherever, what they're trying to do. So we need to make a move ourselves. And that's rather hard to do when you get kids that's just all out of control, particularly Black kids that are just out of control.
That's why we as a collective, our consciousness has been risen. We now know, each of us in this forum, that we have a responsibility to our children, to our generations to follow, to help them understand the situation at hand. And that is that we as a people, those that understand the common thread we share,
recording in progress.
We need to work to save our children, to inform our children, to help our young people understand that we know what's happening to us today is a ploy, that we have to intervene. We have to establish some kind of a strategy to help our young people move into and throughout this system that they have become victims to without any knowledge of their own. We are just beginning to understand why things are the way they are.
Okay, can I just interject? But this too. Okay, one thing I will say on the president's level, you can make a case that fine, Biden and even Pritzker may not be perfect, but they are a whole lot better than the extreme right wing.
Okay.
I mean, it's obvious the direction that the right wing, that the quote unquote GOP grand old party, it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, because they have just gone further and further and further to the right. And moreover, the GOP party, they're the bigots.
Mm-hmm. Right. And
those are some of the biggest bigots that you will find. And, you know, me personally, You know, if you're going to do, as far as immigration, if you're going to let Mexicans in, why not let other people like from Haiti and Africa and Ghana, Ghana, Africa, I'm sorry, and Nigeria, Africa, come over here too? I mean, yeah, I mean, let them all come in. I mean, there are people, and this is something that another thing that a lot of our people don't seem to get. A lot of those Hispanics or Africans, Native Americans or Arabs, they'll come over here and to this country, and they take what they can get. They will put their money together and they will buy a building or a storefront and send money back home. But for whatever reason, why don't we seem to get that?
And I think that's what George Blakemore was saying today. He said, we've got to do something so powerful. Like when the Million Man March happened, I love watching the ticker tape on the stock market, even though I don't know what the heck I'm looking at, but I'm just looking at those abbreviations and seeing how one day it goes up and the next day it comes down, right? And so when this is what happened when the brothers went. I watched Monday morning and the stock market almost crashed because we did not spend our money in society. When we went to the Million Woman March, the exact same thing happened when we came back. It was a dent in the economy. And so George Blakemore, if you all look him up, that's what he was saying today. He was like, if we're going to effect change, we got to hit them where it hurts.
Yeah.
And we cannot spend our money. We got to figure out what gives us the autonomy to have a voice. And right now, our voice is muted.
And Levette, you're right. We can change that. We can change that. And by the way, guys, I just saw in my news feed that the 2024 budget for the city of Chicago is already predicted to be $538 million short. And a third of that shortfall is because of the illegal immigrant crisis. How about that?
How about that? How about that?
Yeah. And it's not going to get better.
So what they gonna do?
Worse.
What they gonna do? Raise taxes on your pop to get
No, they need to put these damn people back on the send them out. Stop letting Abbott in Texas letting those people come up to the Chicago area or go. That needs to stop. We need to have the clamps put on that and have that city council tell them they must make English the language, since they don't seem to have sense enough to do it without someone coming there and telling them they better do it. We got to go to one of their Wednesday meetings and say, look, you must write an ordinance saying that English is the language of origin of the United States, and cut that mess out about us having to be. It's nice to be bilingual, but it should not be an imposition.
Right. I mean, right. Yeah. You can't demand that. I think that's wrong. That needs to be revised. But again, if you're going to do that, like I said before, why don't they let some people from Haiti and Africa and
they're not trying to do, and the United States is not trying to do that. We already know that. They're not letting Haitians come here, nor the Sudanese. They're not letting those people come here in droves like that. They're just not, because they don't want them here.
So guys, why don't we put together, each of us, some bullet points about action, some action points. What do we do now? Now that we all know, yeah, okay, this is going on, been going on, gonna keep on going on. What are we gonna do to start to deter what's going on, to start to change it, manipulate it? Who do we need to see? What do we need to do? What's an action plan?
And that would be a legislative process.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you something. You're not going to. I mean, legislation is of course is important. It's powerful, but you're not going to in this society legislate uh, yourself into having full citizenship and civil rights. Though that has to be part of the plan too. You have to have some economy because you live in a capitalist system. And so in order to compete, that's where you're going to be. Now, I have a background uh, in science and technology. I've done chemistry and engineering, the real stuff. For people to be self-sufficient, to feed themselves, not have all of these deserts, food deserts, and what have you. We need to have more scientists and engineers. I'm gonna tell you something. Those groups that we discover that are the most successful in the society. Look, I've been a fellow over there at one of the top schools in the country over at Northwestern. Was offered to go to the Yale. You know what? Those people who are the most successful, look at what they do technically. Look at what they do technically. Well, look, the people, how many professors do they have? With PhDs and all that. We got to start going in this direction. Do you know, back in the 80s, they said that a quarter of all PhDs were over there in Japan. Why be dogged? In the 80s, it's unbelievable. Or maybe I can't believe that, but they say that's true. So you got to have this sort of thing go in regards to the eligibility of the president or the past one to hold office. We're dealing with a nation of laws based on precedent, cases that came before. So, in order to predict, make a judgment on this guy, you got to look at the most infamous so-called anti-patriot was Benedict Cardinal. What did he ever go to jail? What happened to him? People since that time, you know, who done what uh, Trump is alleged to have done. You're going to have to look at those type of cases on the federal level and state to make
A projection.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? But is
I
it critical? It is critical.
So, but I'm speaking more of what do we as a collective do to start channeling our efforts toward making sure that any youth we come in contact with, our objective should be to help them understand the importance of knowing how this system works.
I think we have to demand that they reject this city being a sanctuary city, because this influx of immigrants is not going to stop, because you're saying your city is a welcoming city to the immigrants. Now, I know that they didn't expect this, because I remember it was a I don't know if she was Venezuelan or where she was exactly, but one of the churches protected her. Remember?
Ayala, I was going to talk about Ayala back in the 19, and she stayed up in there. You couldn't do that in no Methodist Baptist, the AME church. Keep on talking. I was going to say that.
So they had no
out
idea.
there in California, yeah.
Right.
No, she was here, and then she went to California. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right. And they had no idea that one would turn into thousands. And so by them declaring this a sanctuary city, we as Black people need to say enough is enough. Denounce that law.
Well, I want to ask you the question. I raised this before, and you're talking about it. Ayala here in Chicago, a parish. She stayed up in there for over a year. Okay, and they couldn't go in and get a warrant to arrest her and take her and seize her. So I brought this business back up about the Catholic Church the relationship with Rome, and particularly the Chicago Archdiocese being the largest one in the country. Okay, let me tell you something. I was down in Springfield as Wanda know, working for the government. You ain't got no Latinos, shockingly, and they passing all these laws. Go to Springfield, you will not see them in any of the stores working nowhere, doing contractor work. I was shocked by that. But getting back to what I was saying, what role has the Catholic Church and the Archdiocese had in going from making a church a sanctuary and their influence on expanding it to the larger metropolitan cities like Chicago, where they have a very strong influence? I'm telling you, there is a silent partner who's very strong, who these people give their money to, okay, who have strong influence in government and politics.
And also stopping them, that's going to stop these huge Catholic churches from closing, because they're closing like the regular stores. And so this influx of people, it gives them parishioners. Wanda, did you lose your breath? So we're the ones don't have a plan.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We need a plan, guys.
And
this
is
plan for real. You all are hitting on some key essential information.
But this is something that I want to say before I forget, because my brain is not that tight all the time. And I think I just forgot, so carry on.
Something I wanted to say. I moved over here in this neighborhood, Grand Crossing, and in the building I live in, I was, coming from the north side, been on the west side. I did not realize the how serious and pervasive the gang subculture is on the south side. As a matter of fact, it dominates the standard culture, if you ask, especially in relationship to black male and female relationships. You have young women who have relationships with gang members who are paying their rent, paying for their cars and all this sort of thing. And I didn't realize it was like this. And so you have, and this is promoted in the music, because they already gave them their own class of music to listen to keep us separated along gender lines. Because when we were growing up, we dropped on the Stylus, the Spinners, or the OJs, or Gladys Knight, or Rita, just like our parents did, So they got us separated on that, and so we got to do something about this pervasive subculture where you have a gang, you have an industrial prison complex mindset and subculture that has permeated and dominates the social narrative in our communities as it relates to young men and women. And that's the reason why we see this burgeoning, of criminality, not going on. What can be done to intervene?
I'll say Wanda and I, we're part of a music studio. And the music studio that we're part of refuse to produce that kind of music. So we embrace the young people that we know and nurture them so that they're the catalyst for change. It's got to be, because when I talk to young people, sagging pants and all of this kind, I was like, y'all need to talk to each other. If you don't like something, and so the young man happens to be my grandson, he's producing music that is appealing to his peers, that says we're not even going to listen to that. And as a matter of fact, he's in the studio tonight because he's one of the performers on Saturday. And his premise is to deal with the megahertz of water and how the vibration of water matters. And so the music is being produced with a certain vibration. And that vibration is part of the airways. And that's how you can control your masses. So we've got to have our young people understand that they're being manipulated and they're being controlled through the airways. And once our young people get it, they do make a difference. They do make a change, because a lot of young people now are vegans, changing their diets, not eating certain things. So something is clicking. And this is what I tried to remember. As we move forward, part of our problem as well is that even though we're talking about Trump and what we don't like and what is possible and not possible, you've got people that look like me will lay down and die for this man. And it's like, what is it that they're not seeing? So there you have conspiracy theories floating around where people just reaching and grabbing them out the air and just like, okay, well, I feel like this is what's going on. And I heard this and I believe this and I heard that. But the bottom line, I don't know who said it. I think it was Brian, that this group that is the 70 million that say that they're behind Trump, these are people who want their race to be privileged. Say they don't give a damn about the truth. They just want to be privileged characters, just as America built this country on certain group of people having privilege. They didn't care who was being hung on a tree. They didn't care who was being shot. They didn't give a damn about the humanity of man as long as they were in the front of the line. So when you've got people like this, then you can't rationally speak to them, because no matter what truth you tell them, just like they say, well, I don't care if Trump, if he shot somebody, it got to be a reason. So they are loony birds. So here we got a bunch of loony birds that's about to run this country. And so we've got to stand up for what is right.
But isn't that the way things have always been in the first place? What has happened is that this so-called purported marginalized, unsatisfied white folk, because they don't get everything, they have I'm lost track of what else. Yeah. Get back to what I was saying.
Don't be like me.
Yeah, I get this for quite a bit. I was give me some incense going, But anyway, this is the way they have always been. What they're doing is not something that is uncommon. We, for the first time, are really being given a chance to see through Trump as a mirror, magnifying the attitudes and behaviors that already existed in the first place that have been covered up during the civil rights period. Because the post civil rights period, this type of behavior and attitude had been prevalent all the time.
Right.
Okay. So this is nothing new. And so what he's doing, he is just, these people do not want to change with the times. The world is changing, not just the United States, but the world is changing. And so what this has done, and now the media has changed. We are there, and they're talking more about actions that people who have been traditionally and historically marginalized have experienced. And so what you're seeing is not uncommon. It's been that way all the time.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, you're absolutely correct about it being that way all the time. And here's the thing. when we look at the Democrats versus the Republicans, and I've been saying this for decades. In fact, I've never declared allegiance with either of the parties, because at the end of the day, the similarities are they're apparent. I mean, here's something that we need to keep in mind. The Democratic Party was started by the Ku Klux Klan. Some people know that, some people don't know that.
Well, it was the segregationist party. It was a segregationist party for years.
Well, I know, but the bottom line is the Democratic Party was created by the Ku Klux Klan. And we know what the
I didn't mean to say that.
And we know what the Ku Klux Klan stands for. Now, all that said, see, and I said this early on, Joe Biden will lose this election coming up because there are a lot of folk in this country and a lot of black men, I'm going to say that, who are very, very pissed off about Biden, because this stuff is flowing through the federal government. His alignment with his being at the helm of the federal government and allowing all these illegal immigrants to come into the United States. There are a lot of blacks and a lot of black men, keep that in mind, who are very, very angry about that. There are a lot of black people who are very angry about that. And I'm one of them, okay?
So
now
being
that's
angry,
what that is.
Madeline, being angry and knowing
it is not just about being angry. Excuse me, Lavette. I want you to know this. When I say I'm angry about something, I'm not just wanting to be angry about something. I believe in taking action, which is the reason I'm doing the work that I'm doing.
Right. And that's why I was getting ready to ask the question. Being angry is, it's like the question would be, and I don't like that, the best of two evils, but here you have a party that has given everything to the rich and nothing to the person, to the ones on the bottom of the totem pole.
You've got the Democrats done. And what have the Democrats done for the last 60 years?
Okay, but listen to this. Right now, you've got one group. Okay, if you just look at this, you got one group. They're trying to lower the medication. They're trying to forgive the student loans. And this is evident. And then you got this group over here that's saying we don't want to give you no relief. So when I look at the two, I'm not just a Democratic fan, but I'm just looking at just the bottom line stuff. They look, just in the last couple of weeks, the tax credits for the children expired. And now more children have been thrown into poverty. Where here, this group of people, they just keep saying, well, we're going to give the money to the 1%ers and keep giving them tax breaks and keep allowing them to have offshore bank accounts. And so here's the group over here and so that's my like, if we were to choose, I think I would want to choose someone that's in your face saying we want to give this, and this group is saying we don't want to give you a damn thing. We don't want to give you no. And they're doing this, and they want to put the government down.
Lavette, I got to stop you right there. Joe Biden was the co-sponsor of Ronald Reagan's Anti-Drug Enforcement Act, which required that bill was passed around 1986, I believe it was.
You out. I remember what he said.
Which required that anybody caught imbibing crack cocaine would be sentenced to an automatic 5 years in prison.
And what was wrong with that?
Excuse me. That started the explosion of the black prison population. But and Joe Biden was the
You know who
co-sponsor of
supported
that
it?
legislation.
Right,
And
but guess who supported it? Guess who brought
what?
it to light? The black politicians, because they were dying like flies.
And who are the black politicians? What party did they primarily represent? After in 1964, when Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, blacks flooded into the Democratic Party. Okay, and so
Okay,
then,
another thing too.
excuse me, I didn't. Let me say
Johnson,
this. Let me say
Johnson,
this. Let me
excuse me,
say this.
excuse me, no, excuse me.
I'm going to say this.
Johnson was one of the biggest
You can say
racist
this.
presidents you'll find.
Okay,
he only
Brian,
did that. He only did that to get the black vote. He wasn't interested.
okay, well, it doesn't matter, damn it. The bottom line is he did it. Okay, that was in 1986.
And he was a hypocritical racist himself.
Joe Biden co-sponsored that legislation in 1994. Then we had Bill Clinton, the president of the United States, sponsoring creating the anti-crime bill, which was by any accounts the most draconian crime legislation in the history of this country.
Biden even said
For
himself
example,
he made a mistake.
I don't want to hear that. He was the sponsor of that legislation.
He made a mistake.
Joe Biden was the sponsor of that legislation. Okay, Joe Biden did more damage to the black families, to the black people, black structure in this country than Donald Trump could ever do.
Okay,
keep that in mind.
Trump is a malignant narcissist,
right?
An inept, malignant narcissist.
He did not do as much.
But Trump cares for no one but Trump.
Biden has done the worst.
For no one but
the
Trump.
Worst.
Well, can I say something? You know, we're talking about these Republicans, but you know, let's just break down the Republican Party for what it is and how did it get like that? Because that was the party
over the last 40 plus years, the Republican Party has gone further and further and further to the right, and it's gotten so.
But how did that happen? A party that of Lincoln and we were better off in Bronzeville. Most of the black people were Republican back in those days at the time. And so you have to ask yourself what happened. I'm gonna tell you what happened, and a lot of it has to do with certain phenomenon that we see going in presidential politics. We just had an insurrection and a person who wants to be a fascist dictator, you know, Trump. So you had the Third Reich, and you know, after the uniting of Germany under, you know, the Kaiser, you know, because they were never a country. They were a bunch of fiefdoms, and then they were united under the Kaiser, and then they went into this business of getting fascist, and then, you know, you said the rise of Hitler. What happened was when World War II came to an end, we know about the history of Brown Brothers, Harriman, the Bushes, and all that. And what happens is the fascists begin to infiltrate the country, and they go through the Republican Party, where blacks had been dominant, you know, players, you know, to some extent, you know, in their incipient political experiences here, and that was a party of business producing money, and it was about capitalism, and so they gave you FDR, giving you this social services type of economy and society, and black people began to trickle into there. Why? Because they created a depression, and they did it deliberately. And so this is how you begin to see how the social politics begins to change. Now they infiltrate the military. You can tell by certain iconography. Brown goes into NASA because, you know, they were doing jet propulsion work over there in Germany, and you see that now in the NASA program, and they go into and so that's the problem with the Republican Party. So you got to begin to call that out, to do something about that. Okay, because we should be able to participate in either one of the parties, especially a party that is about business and producing capital and making money, because that's what we don't have. And we ain't never gonna get it. We're never gonna become equals through the legislative process. Who ever heard of somebody doing something like that?
That makes sense. You're so right.
And I just wanted to say one thing about, you know, when I think about even watching the movie Superfly and all of that, you know, they say art imitates life. And you had men and women that was just sitting by raking in the drug money while our people were dying. And so, were the laws right? I don't think so. I think that they could have thought it out and made it better, but who's blaming the black people that was killing black people?
Right.
And so that's my issue is here you've got all of these black people making all of this money on the death of our people. So you had black politicians that were on board with this law that Biden and all of them were supporting because everybody in the whole world is watching black people die like flies. So I'm not saying that how they did it was the correct way, but nobody ever talks about how it was the black man and the black woman that was allowing their people to perish. So I'm not making any excuses for the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. We gotta be responsible for our own demise. And someone stepped in with something. Was it right? No. It wasn't all the way.
Hello.
Okay.
Even now, who's selling drugs to our people?
Us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if we don't talk about how to repair ourselves, then everybody can just come in and take advantage of our weaknesses. So we've got to be able to strengthen our own communities. As
It's got to start from within. That's what you're saying. It's got to start from
absolutely.
within.
So, when we argue about all of these people and what they did to us, and a lot of it is what we did to ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because just like the argument now is like, okay, do we go with Trump or do we go with Biden? If whatever Biden is doing, you've got people trying to help the least of them. But if you look at the Republican Party, they don't give a damn about nothing but them.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
And that is not. We got to look at that, you all, because what we are also talking about. We look at the school situation. See, because I work in criminal law, and I was talking to in fact, Wanda and I had a very robust conversation about this within the last couple of days, right, Wanda?
Uh-huh.
And we were talking about, in fact, what's going on, with the quality of education.
Yeah.
It starts from the time that a child comes out the womb. Mm-hmm. The parent is supposed to be providing examples to children in terms of how learning is supposed to happen. I'm on a Zoom call. And so that's what's supposed to happen, but it's not happening, unfortunately, like that. And so now we have an education system which has been so disparaging as far as how our Black children receive the quality of learning that they're supposed to get. And most times, you all know, if you live in the wrong zip code, you're going to get a shit can education. That's to put it succinctly. Okay. And that's been happening for decades and decades. Has it gotten better? No, it has not.
Yeah, but a lot of these people need to take some responsibility. I mean, no one's stopping them from going to school and doing their schoolwork and getting a high school diploma. Now, to some extent, I have to beg to differ with you because these teachers have to go through all kinds of loopholes, jump through fire, have all kinds of accreditations and all of this sort of thing. Now that Black people start becoming teachers, that was not the case back in the 60s. So these teachers are more than qualified than they used to be. It is the attitude that's going on.
In fact, I was going to
in the
leave out here in the
home.
morning
You
because I
know,
got cash.
I can hear you talking.
So I need to go
I can
to
hear you talking. So
What's
can you
going
mute?
on?
Yeah. And so you know, I'm a single guy. I meet people out here. I've met women go over to the house and Delco had a kid come up to you and ask you a question about something in the textbook, and your natural inclination is to want to help them. And well, if you do that, well, you will know it all. But see, you're a woman. See, you can go do that. See, around a man's kids, and ain't nobody gonna do it. And so this is the kind of attitude that our people need to stop. See, this kind of attitude that goes down. Hey, if I was a single mother and got a son and I'm dating somebody or got a friend and he got information and he can teach my kid, hell yeah. And he's decent, he's not harmful to them. Of course, I live with a person, got multiple degrees, damn near 4.0 student engineer, and the kids are flunking in grade school and in high school. And I step into, and she asked me to help them. And I begin to help them do their work because I know what it's like to not be a good student and have a hard time understanding. So I know how to bridge that gap. Guess what happens? I start teaching her kids. She started getting jealous because the kids understand it from me better than her. See, this kind of attitude's got to stop. And see, my point is whether they're educated or uneducated, the sort of attitude that they have about how to raise their kids and educate them, it doesn't make any sense. You know, you can't do something about that.
And I think that's part of a systemic society that we're in, you know, because when you look at the root of what you're talking about, and I'm talking about the root of it, we are the only race of people that don't look at the root of our circumstance. And if the Jews can still claim that the Holocaust affected them, we need to understand that this systemic society that we live in has damaged us beyond repair, except through the grace of God, if we can pray and we can figure it out and work it out, where there's a phenomenon that happens. Because the Black race has always had phenomenal moments that have taken them to the next level. And we're at that point because as Emmanuel closed down all of these schools and said that Black teachers were so dumb that they couldn't teach.
I don't know what happened to her.
What happened other than the children were displaced from their communities. They were forced to cross gang lines. They were forced to drop out because a lot of them, the schools were contaminated with lead. So we've got to look at the systemic situation and just know that it is the totality of our being that's been damaged so bad. Right?
And Lavette, I want to add one thing. When any child has to worry, especially now, more about survival, you know, in going to school, while they're in school, and even when they're coming home from school, they have to worry more about survival versus learning. I mean, how do you learn like that?
Right, because I can't. I mean, if I'm stressed out, my brain don't work. So I can imagine how they feel. You know, sometimes I see, and then here you know, like my granddaughter yesterday, she ran behind the back of the house. She just, and then she said, "Oh, you told me to pick my bike up," and I had to tell her, "You can never." She's 6. I said, "You can never get out of the sight of someone. You can never go somewhere where no one is watching you and you don't see another adult that you know. You cannot put yourself in that position. So these children know they're being kidnapped, they're being taken for body parts, they're being murdered. Look at the stress that they are living under. And so we cannot be in a vacuum and not understand that there's a multiplicity of issues that would take us something phenomenal happen for us to be on the same page, because there's so many pages in the book and we're on so many of them that we've got to maybe come together in one understanding. Say, for instance, if we want to talk about this being a sanctuary city, then we have to be focused on that issue, because it's so many issues that we sometimes don't agree on, that we can't afford to have that division. So we've got to figure it out. But we need to have one item that we can say, you know what? Well, we all agree on this. And that to me, the one about the sanctuary city that's putting us in on the bottom of the totem pole, maybe we can come around that issue and make a difference, because we're not going to agree on Trump. We're not going to agree on some other things, but we've got to be real, understanding that, to know the difference, that one group does not want you to have anything and the other group might want you to have something. So we got to look at what has happened where this group does not vote for anything that elevates society. Nothing. They don't.
And that, in my opinion, is the definition of repression, and also too, you can even go so far as to say bigotry.
Right, and the alt-right, they tell you, you know what? They used to hide behind robes. They don't, and hoods. They come right up in the public now. It's like, well, we're gonna vote against this, and we're gonna vote against that, and we're gonna vote against Black kids having to learn the truth about their history. They, look at what they're doing. And so here, if we want to have our children to have any pride in who we are, how can we allow this society of Republicans to say, oh, you want to claim you woke? Yeah, when we in the 70s, we woke up. And so what, they want us to go back to sleep? And
well, people, those who have that kind of mindset, they have no business in politics at all.
Absolutely. That's so demeaning and destructive. And how do our children wake up in the morning knowing that some white person has said, oh, we don't want to teach your truth. We just want you to learn about our truth and what we did and how we conquered. But no, not you. We don't want to talk about how you were hung in trees and because history repeats itself. And it's just like, across the nation right now, you got these rogue cops that's beating the hell out of Black men and women. And they're all a part of the Republican Party. So we got to
and police officers who engage in that type of conduct, they have no business in law enforcement. They have no business in society. I mean,
right.
Well, she's talking about, to get back to this business about instruction that these kids are receiving now. If you notice the curriculum, I don't care what state you're in, it's pretty much the same. And I'm not going to say who these people are, but there's an elite group of people out of New York who are very much responsible and influential in the development of the academic curriculum based on the Horace Mann School of Education. that we see, and also there was a guy who was a professor, Dr. Asa Hillard. You know, you might want to go ASA Hillard, Hillard. Go check him out on the internet. He's now deceased. The brother talked about what happened to the African mind to put us in the state of mental existence that we're in. That when we were brought over here, it's like a computer. I'm a computer scientist. The computer is dumb. It doesn't know anything but what you program it to know. And so the human mind was completely gutted. The African mind was completely gutted as much as they could. So for the purpose of them force feeding any kind of program that they wanted to up in there. It's like your Shelley Frankenstein, you know, created by the aristocrats, you know, and we're the new nigger Frankenstein. And so we have to do an anthology of analysis to understand why we are in a mental state, how do we get there, and what do we have to go about reprogram myself. First, we must understand the state of not knowing who we are in our history, and that's the problem with the young people. They have no memory of who they are as a Black person. We had began to get some sense of that in the 60s. But that has fallen to the wayside, and so we need to have that new conscious rising again in putting in place community universities and various other type of social, not necessarily part of the state's academic curriculum, but one that we fashion and horn for ourselves to educate our youth. That's why I went back to school to become a professor, to be responsible for doing that thing. But in science and technology, we can't continue to live in this society and think if we were given a bunch of money and said we can do our own thing, we would perish because we do not have the fundamentals that is need to. We couldn't even produce our own water unless we bought it from somebody.
And I just wanted to interject that a group that Wanda and I, we're part of the Garfield Park Advisory Council, and our president, Gina Jameson, she's just partnered with a school to do coding for Black girls. And so I'm not sure if it's just girls, but the bottom line is that what you were saying is that we need to develop scientists and people who are because you're talking about AI and you're talking about robotics. I want my young people to understand that, so if the robot is coming toward me, they can program it to go the other direction. Because
that's good to look in the future, but I'm gonna tell you right now, we need to have some social scientists and computer scientists who can work with the existing technologies and old ones that really are responsible for running all of the systems that are current. ML, machine learning, AI is in the future, but we need to just go ahead and just deal. Not to aside what you said, but we need to just go ahead and develop minds that work with the ones we already got.
And I'm going to tell you also this. When you go to the State Board of Education, I have a background also in public policy research in the area of education. I know this, and I've mentioned it to someone recently. You can go to the State Board of Education, for example, for Illinois, and I'm sure other states have a similar template, and that is they have 3 lanes of the way education can run from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. They have the minimum that you can teach, the very minimum, and the minimum would be let's say if you I'll say the Kmart version, real practically nothing, almost a skeleton version of an education. Then they have the medium which will get you halfway there. I'll use it like that. And then they have the maximum lane for education. When you look at that curriculum, it will, and you would see schools like in Chicago, like Walter Payton, Jones College Prep, the top high schools in this city, which are, by the way, some of the top high schools in the country. You'll see that type of education, and that's at the high school level. You have a similarity in the same type of education that's offered at the elementary level. So it is offered, but how do you get there? I had a sister, she didn't like school. There was an 8-year difference between us. So I wasn't around her. I left home when she was 10 and I joined the Navy. The bottom line is she did not like school. She barely got through the 8th grade and was socially promoted out of the 8th grade. She didn't like school, didn't try to go, didn't try to learn, nothing. Did our mother try to push her? I think at that point, after 5 of us, maybe she was tired. I don't know, but it didn't happen. And so when she had 6 children, and what happened to them? All of them turned out to be a disaster. 2 of them became criminal institutional prisoners. And it happened because she didn't like school. And so when I would sometimes talk to her on the phone, because I was living in another state, I would tell her, give her suggestions about what to do. Did she take those suggestions to heart and work with her children? No, she did not. And now I'm mentioning her as an example because conversely, I had said to myself, and maybe to somebody else, I was not going to be a poverty statistic. So although I didn't always do the work at the level that I knew I was capable of, ultimately, I did get it together. And by the way, yes, I graduated from Northwestern. And that was because at some point I said, and I had a child, and I knew what he needed from me in order to start out on the right path. And he did. Now, a lot of these parents, unfortunately, they have children and they didn't like school. They're not trying to be involved. What they do is they drop their kids off at school when they're ready, let's say for kindergarten, even at the preschool level. And they just don't offer them the learning opportunities. And because they don't know, or both, they don't know and they don't care. They don't know and they don't care because they did not like education and all that it represented themselves. That's a tragedy, but it's a fact. And we know what happens. So how do we fix that? That's the $5 question.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, we've gone way over. So we're going to have to take an assignment. What do we want to follow up on for the next CCN On Point? What are we going to talk about next week? Because I know it's got to come from this discussion.
I'm going to say this and I'll make it real quick. How many people have worked at jobs that they can't stand and they hate them? You know what? Everybody. And so we just gonna have to come to the understanding that, hey, I don't like this schooling. I don't like this kind of trade and all that. But you know what? I don't like it, but I better do it any damn way. And just go ahead, man up, woman up, and go ahead and deal with it. And you don't like it, you don't like your boss, but you got to deal with it. And that's just grow the hell up and deal with it. That's all I got to say.
And ultimately, you can start a business for yourself. You can start. I mean, I've done that. The work I'm doing now. I'm self-employed, and it's because I know I do better when I'm running the business. Yes. I know I do better, and so this way, and I'm working with it now, so I can create more jobs. I'm creating contract opportunities, and so that is what I'm doing. And a lot of us can do that, and we need to do that. Yeah, running a business is not an easy venture. No, it's not. If it were, more of us would be doing it. But we can do it. And when we do it, we have to think about scaling up those businesses, creating $1 million, multi-million dollar, billion-dollar businesses so we can hire our own people and not be looking to Mr. Kaczewski to hire our people.
Come on now.
Exactly. There you go.
There you go. There you go right there. So that's what we need. That's step one. Okay. Let's come back with send me some text on what you think our next discussion should be focused on. I'll look to hear from each of you. We're gone, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Wanda.
Thanks. Thanks.
Feel better, Brian. I know how it is. All right. Take care, y'all.
Good night.
All righty.